Assassin's Promise by Thomas Woodward. Chapter 52. My legs flew forward as they never had before. I rushed downwards as if I was the wind itself. Enormous snaking columns of mist exploded as I passed them, becoming living arms reaching for me. I could barely make out the ground. Only small pockets were visible now, as the mist poured in from both above and below. An enormous swirling mass of thick steam gathered around my field of view in a circle. The mist had become almost pure black, dark crashes of light falling behind their outer form as if through a dirtied mirror. The line of blue fire I ran down ended abruptly in a roiling pool of mist. It moved tentatively, like a great creature testing the air. As I moved closer, the pattern changed. The mist began to whirl in a circular pattern, like a great gaping tide of murky nothingness. I could see a face forming as the gaping maw opened wider. A tiny pocket of air lay several spans to the right, but there was no cord that lay beneath it. I would have to jump blindly. The band of blue fire beneath my feet began to warp and fray, my weight beginning to pull me downwards. Looking around, I could only see dark mist pressing in on me. Howling faces appeared within clouds all around me, enormous gaping maws screaming into black nothingness. A giant recoil sent me lurching forwards as the cord snapped. I dove, aiming for the rapidly disappearing hole of sky. I held my posture together firmly, closing my eyes tight and holding my breath as my ears assaulted me with voices beyond the coil of a sane world. I could feel myself passing through some sort of barrier, the scream of the nothingness fading abruptly. I opened my eyes, and the air rushed below me. I was still spans above the ground and moving at a terrible speed. I saw a bright blue line of ghost fire. Trying to press my form towards it, I reached out and tensed for the recoil. It hit me like a wave. Pain washed through me as I was nearly flung away from the force of it. Eyes watering, gasping for breath, I hung there, arms afire. As I looked down, I could see light beginning to touch the ghostly blue threads beneath me that crisscrossed above the street. In terror, where the light touched them, they began to evaporate like mist. Moving with incredible urgency, I swung myself forward, the sun still only a slit on the horizon. Sucking in air, I rushed downwards, jumping to catch another thread before a ray of light touched the cord above me, only the memory of it remaining. I hung there for a moment, unsure where to move next. There was no easy ghost fire cord within reach. I estimated I still hung 60 spans above the ground, a beautiful tableau spreading about before me. I caught glimmers of movement, but I was too focused on finding an escape to dwell on it. Enormous plants reached towards the sky in sharp patterns on the ground, as if they had been tended by a master artisan. An enormous fountain dominated the square immediately beneath me. I looked and saw a strange man washing his face in its depths. He wore exceptionally fine robes of an unknown material, white and gold crisscrossing it in intricate patterns. A long, solemn crown of gold rested on his head. It was strangely white, the hue of it shifting with his movements back and forth from true gold and purest ivory. Eyes of green held me transfixed for a moment. I felt my weight begin to pull at the cord of light I still clutched. In terror, I pulled my gaze back to the tether. It was almost completely translucent. Rays were beginning to touch it, although the light had been filtered through a keyhole that stood in the center of an enormous wall that separated the inner city. I moved without hesitation, pulling myself hand over hand, hoping another route would become visible to me as I moved. The glimmering strand ended abruptly, roughly 40 spans ahead of me, in the corner of the wall that rested high above the courtyard. I could feel its shimmering substance move back and forth in my hands. I reached forward, and my hand passed through the line of blue fire, so faint it was now. Almost losing my balance, I barely held myself from loosing a shout of terror. Frantically grabbing at the cord, it seemed to regain substance momentarily, in time for me to regain purchase. Every few spaces it would disappear abruptly as the light of the sun struck it more directly. I noticed shadows passing over the keyhole then. As long as a shadow held in front of the keyhole, I would be free to move. They passed sporadically, and with each moment the light was unimpeded, my grip grew more tenuous. With a great clawing of fury, I set upon racing down the cord's length, no longer caring what great wonders the inner city may hold. None would matter if I fell. The wind was almost non-existent. Heat crept into my limbs as the temperature rose. The pounding of my heart was the only sound I heard as I moved silently on. I saw the end of the tether stuck directly into the wall before me. Feeling the strand give way, I leaped forward, wedging myself between the two thick walls of stone, where they met to form a sharp corner. Pressing my arms outward, I slowly began to move myself down, deathly aware that nothing but air lay behind me. My muscles tensed in terrible fashion. My right arm spasmed for a long moment. I used my legs and other arm to steady myself until my arm subsided. Weary and muscles burning, I continued, one leg and then another. I stopped counting the breaths between my movements. I started to lean backwards without thinking, thick fatigue filling my arms and legs before cold sweat took me, and I gripped at the smooth stone with my fingernails before pressing outwards again against the stone. I had to maintain the necessary tension to keep myself wedged into the corner. I took another step, and my foot hit smooth stone beneath me. I almost fainted with relief, curling into a ball on the ground, focused only on sucking in sweet air. A distant melody pulled at me, but I ignored it, happy to simply be alive. Sweat coated my clothing, sticking to me and bringing on shivers, even as the temperature began to rise. I just lay there for a moment, cool stone beneath me. I raised my head back and looked into the impossible blue sky. Nothing remained of the ghostly cords of fire that I had clung to. They felt as if they had been part of a dream.